Hey everybody, it's time to feed the Subpod right behind me. A lot of you out there are at the start of your Subpod journey and overfeeding can accidentally happen. Today I'm going to show you some of the preventative steps to stop overfeeding, and if you accidentally overfeed, because we all do it, I'm going to give you some solutions to help you out with that. But first I want to talk about the big problem with overfeeding. The reason why overfeeding can be an issue, especially at the start of your Subpod journey, is because the food waste simply just rots. And when it rots, the worms aren't actually eating it. The worms will evacuate the Subpod system, it's an emergency, and they'll leave. And they won't come back until the environment returns back to normal. So let's go through a few of the steps on how to make sure that you're not overfeeding your Subpod system. You'll notice on the divider panel, this was recently installed about a week ago, guys. And if you have any questions at all about setting up the Subpod or how to feed it or why worms, please just let me know. But in terms of like how much to feed it, we have a divider panel here with 1, 2, and 3. And the worms will slowly build up their population, which you'll notice is a dark material, as the compost. And as that builds up on the divider levels, you can start to increase your food waste. And we have all the instructions over here. Level 1 between 2 to 5 litres, level 2 between 5 to 10 litres or quarts, and level 3 between 10 to 30 litres or quarts. But you'll see here I'm only at level 1 because I just started this Subpod system. So I have to feed between 2 to 5 litres. However, it'll probably take about 6 weeks to get to the next level. Now that was a lot of numbers. I just threw at you, understand, I don't really like numbers. So we don't expect everybody to measure it out, although it is good at the very start of your journey. But here's a good indicator. I'll just pull out this average compost kitchen caddy is about 3 litres. About 3 to 5 litres. So you probably want to do about 1 of these a week. And you feed one side, let that side rest, then feed the other side. Now, sometimes people, including myself, get really excited when you buy the Subpod, get the worms in there, and you want to feed them a whole bunch of food waste. And you just dump it all in. As so. Now the worms are not going to really like it. Let's have a look at this. So you can imagine, because that's just going to sit there, the worms are not going to get through that, because it's going to create an environment where these anaerobic microbes come in, and anaerobic microbes are basically microbes that take advantage of no oxygen. And when they come in, they create acids and alcohols, and the worms don't like it and the plants don't like it as well. And it creates methane, which is a baddie as well. So if you accidentally do this, the first step is to add heaps and heaps of carbon. I always mention this in the videos, you're probably sick of me saying it, but it really is one of the best things you can do to put your system back into balance. This is coconut peat. Now coconut peat is just an awesome material to use because it is porous, so it holds water, but it also allows oxygen to come through. So I would add probably about a brick into that just to balance it out. Sorry, the camera went a little bit wonky. We're back in action. You could also add some newspaper as well. Just tearing it all up. A bit of cardboard. And really, you can throw in as much as you can, guys. Honestly, you can't really overdo it. I'm underdoing it here because I just don't have a whole bunch of coconut peat on me, but I would throw in a brick's worth if I'm worried you can't really overdo it, because the worms will eat the coconut peat. The next thing is they'll eat any carbon, to be honest, but they'll enjoy the coconut peat, it's easy. Next thing is just to stir it all in there, making sure that everything is nicely distributed among the worms and the carbon. And then you want to let that settle. Come back in a few days. Come back in about 3 days. 3 days have passed. Time machine, and have a look at the system. Now, if it's still wet, if it smells, add more carbon. If you notice that the worm population isn't there, then wait another 3 days after you've added your carbon and come back. Now, if you still notice that the food waste end is starting to rot, starting to smell, then unfortunately, it's probably best to take out that rotting food waste. You've added way too much for the worms to handle. But usually, most of the time, if you just add in enough carbon, it will balance it out and find an equilibrium. But we really want to avoid adding that food waste, that extra amount of food waste at the start of your subpod journey. So that's what to do if you've added way too much food waste. Just balance it out with carbon. But we really want to look on preventing that from happening in the first place. So a lot of people out there would have thrown in the 2,000 worms, but if you've actually added less than 2,000 worms, because let's be honest, it is pretty hard to get worms these days, you just want to make sure you be extra precautious on how much you feed the worms during the first weeks and the first month. If you put in, say, 1,000 worms, then it would be more like 2 liters a week. If you put in 500 worms, then it'd be more like 1 to 2 liters a week. And we don't really recommend putting less worms in there because the worms actually like to be together. They build up resilience. They sort of team up and work together. So by putting less, it does take a longer time to build up the population, yes, but it also decreases their chances on really thriving. Fun tip is that the compost worms will double their population every 6 weeks. So those levels I mentioned will start to increase roughly about every 2 months or so. So guys, we're going to let that rest in there. I'm just going to had an urge to tear up this bread because bread can usually go moldy if it's just dry. But the good news is when you start to build up your population and you start to get around level 2, level 3, you can be a lot more generous with your throwing in your food waste. The system becomes a lot more robust. I could throw it in there if you've overfed it accidentally. It's okay because the worm population's there. There's enough castings and microbes to handle it. But just during the start of your journey in the first month, just take a little extra care and look for those signs. If it starts to smell, make sure you're aerating it, adding the carbon. Try not to feed the worms too much, and you should be good as gold after that. Once the population's built up, it becomes a whole different new experience, not only for the subpod, but for the plants around the system. You'll start to notice that there'll be more worms traveling out into the system. We could even find one right now. There we go. There's a compost worm right here. It's only a little guy, but I suspect he is out here because I hadn't fed this system in the last week, so they started to travel out. Now, because I've started to feed the system, they'll start to come back in. But again, if I've overfed it, then it's going to start to rot and the worms won't be encouraged to come back in because of those anaerobic microbes again. So if anybody has any questions, so I've just thrown a whole bunch of numbers at you and scientific definitions and stuff. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we will try our best. I'll answer them myself as well, to just try and get you guys up to speed. But it is really easy. It is really easy. Just the first month, you just want to take a little bit more extra care on your worms and just help build up those populations. Thank you, everybody. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, happy composting.